All right, guys. So the mask has fully come off at this point. The story that's been pushed by JD Vance and Trump and other right-wing pundits and politicians over the last couple of weeks about Haitian migrants in Springfield, Ohio, supposedly stealing and eating people's pets has really exposed a pretty dark and sinister underbelly that exists in this country. And we got a lot to get into here. I'm going to give you most of the latest updates, at least from what I've seen, because this has escalated to the point where now in Springfield, because of these baseless, zero evidence provided rumors, there are now bomb threats, right? And threats of violence within this community because of this kind of bullshit. Let's go ahead and jump in here first with JD Vance, with Dana Bash over on CNN, where he basically, I don't know if this is like a Freudian slip or what this is, but he kind of admits that he has been conjuring up this story without any evidence in order to push whatever his agenda is. So let's go ahead and jump into this first clip here.
Again, started this in part by saying that, which Donald Trump repeated on the debate stage, that, and he didn't say anything about the policies that you're talking about. He just said Haitians are eating dogs and cats. Can you affirmatively say now that that is a rumor that has no basis with evidence?
Dana, the evidence is the first-hand account of my constituents who are telling me that this happened. And by the way, I've been trying to talk about the problems in Springfield for months, and the American media ignored it. There was a congressional hearing just last week of angel moms who lost children because Kamala Harris let criminal migrants into this country who then murdered their children. The American media totally ignored this stuff until Donald Trump and I started talking about cat memes. If I have to, create stories so that the American media actually pays attention to the suffering of the American people, then that's what I'm going to do, Dana, because you guys are completely letting Kamala Harris coast. You had one interview with her. You talk about pushing back against me, Dana. You didn't push back against the fact that she cast the deciding vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which is why a lot of Americans can't afford food and housing.
You just said that you're creating a story.
Public policy.
Sir, you just said that you're creating the story.
What's that, Dana?
You just said that this is a story that you created. So the eating dogs and cats thing is not.
Dana, it comes from first-hand accounts from my constituents. I say that we're creating a story, meaning we're creating the American media focusing on it. I didn't create 20,000 illegal migrants coming into Springfield thanks to Kamala Harris's policies.
Okay, so a lot to unpack there. Number one, they are not illegal migrants. They are legal migrants who happen to go to Springfield for a number of different reasons. Part of the reason being that Springfield, they had this sort of like, I guess, revitalization effort. They wanted to bring businesses to Springfield. And as a part of that effort, they needed more workers. And so Haitian migrants saw an opportunity with a low cost of living and potential job opportunities. And so they sort of organically started moving there. It's not as if like Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, and their administration came over the top, brought a bunch of criminals from Haiti, and then dumped them into this small town in Ohio. That's not what happened here. Okay. And he understands that. Now, there are so many other levels to get to in terms of what he just said. Let's start with him attacking the Inflation Reduction Act as the reason that people are struggling to afford basic life necessities, right? Because that kind of gets to the core of my issue here with JD Vance, using these Haitian migrants, ginning up a story that he admits here is something that he helped to create within the media, right? So he admits that he helped to create it, but he attacks the Inflation Reduction Act. What does that tell us, guys? Because my critique of the Inflation Reduction Act is that it didn't go far enough, right? In terms of left-wing, bold, economic, populist legislation, right? To actually address the material concerns of average working class people. That would be my critique. He says that that bill is the reason people can't afford their basic life necessities. So what does that tell you about JD Vance? Well, it tells you that in a potential future Trump-JD administration, their goal is going to be basically the same thing that was Trump's main accomplishment in his first term, which was what? Deregulation and tax cuts for corporations and billionaires. So when he sits here and pretends like, well, this is really just a story of, protecting the people of Springfield, Ohio, and to make sure that social services aren't being drained. This is obvious bullshit, okay? If you cared about addressing the cost of living, how about we go after corporate landlords? How about we go after the corporations who are price gouging on basic life necessities? How about we enact something like, Medicare for all to make sure that people aren't being bankrupted by the tens of thousands in this country for the crime of getting sick or injured? How about we build more public housing? How about we invest in infrastructure in this country, right? Which, even though, again, I think it didn't go far enough, that's something that did happen under the Biden administration, which is something that he only has a critique for. So, again, the core of this is very obvious, guys. He is, instead of talking about actual legislation that could address the material concerns of working class people, including people living in Springfield, Ohio, instead of talking about policies that would uplift those communities, he's trying to tear down and smear and lie about Haitian migrants in Springfield as if they are the core of the issue here. No, the core of the issue here is capitalism and, yes, a government that has been corrupted by capitalists and has left people behind and has allowed them to be screwed over for decades and decades. As jobs have been shipped overseas, as our manufacturing base has been, gutted in this country, as wages have remained stagnant, there are so many different things that you could do to address those issues. But believe it or not, step number one is not smearing and lying about migrants. Okay? So this is how you know JD Vance is a perfect example of a fake populist, somebody who postures as if he's trying to represent the interests of average working class people, but is actually doing, very obviously, not even really effectively, right, is actually doing the bidding of the wealthy, of the elites. That's exactly what we're witnessing here, to the point where he's even willing to admit that, yeah, we're kind of ginning up this story and there's no real evidence. The evidence he provides, by the way, is that some of his constituents supposedly called his office and reported this was happening. This coming, presumably, after they had already created this narrative about Haitian migrants stealing and eating people's pets. So you created that narrative, right? You have this entire right-wing ecosystem freak out over it. And then you have a bunch of people calling your office, again with no evidence, and claiming that, oh yeah, I saw that, that happened to my dog, that happened to my cat. Really? That's the evidence that you're providing, is people called your office after you spun up this narrative and reaffirmed the thing that you are already trying to sell. Okay, now we move on because he's been doubling and tripling and quadrupling down on this entire narrative. Here we have what I think accurately is pointed out here by CK is kind of just Nazi rhetoric. I don't know what else you would call this. I mean, he says here, I speak German and was a language tutor in college. If you were to directly translate 1930s Nazi propaganda, it would sound exactly like this. So what did JD say? He says, in Springfield, Ohio, there has been a massive rise in communicable diseases. He's saying the Haitian migrants are bringing in diseases now. Rent prices, car insurance rates, and crime. This is what happens when you drop 20,000 people into a small community. By the way, the actual estimates from what I've seen is like between 12 to 15,000, but let's put that aside. He says Kamala Harris's immigration policy aims to do this to every small town in our country. So the narrative that JD Vance is trying to sell here is Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. They are trying to import criminal, diseased, bloodthirsty, for your pets at least, migrants, and they're trying to import those into every small community around the country. And so you have to protect your way of life as a white American to make sure that your community does not become polluted, right? And what was the verbiage that we heard from Trump previously? He said, immigrants are poisoning the blood of this country. Guys, it is not unreasonable to say that this is Nazi kind of rhetoric. It's not unreasonable. It's not hyperbolic, right? I understand some people have issues with that because sometimes it gets taken overboard and you have a disagreement with somebody who happens to be right-wing and people just call them a Nazi immediately. No. Let's be real, guys. Let's be real. This is Nazi rhetoric here. The migrants, they're coming in, they're killing your daughters. This is something Trump said recently. They're raping and killing your daughters. They're bringing diseases. They're stealing and eating your pets. They're bringing crime, even though statistically native-born Americans commit more crimes than immigrants who come into the country. You know, it would take a long time to probably go through and to see exactly how much have the rent prices gone up, how much have the car insurance rates gone up, et cetera, et cetera. But again, if you care about rent prices, then, okay, let's talk about the issue of corporate landlords in this country. Let's talk about the lack of affordable housing in this country. What legislation could we pass in order to address that problem? But that's not the conversation that JD Vance started with here. And he's doing this sort of like bullshit backpedaling right now, where he's trying to pretend as if the migrants are stealing and eating your pets narrative was not the main focus of what they were saying originally. Now he's trying to spin it back and to say, no, I'm really just concerned about housing costs. Really? So why didn't you start with that? Why didn't you start with saying, listen, there are some issues in Springfield, Ohio. People are struggling because their wages are stagnant and they're struggling with rent prices and grocery prices. And here's XYZ policy that I want to promote in order to address those concerns, right? You didn't start with that. You started with this racist smear campaign that the Haitians are stealing people's dogs and eating them and stringing them up from trees. I mean, this is so transparent. It's so transparent. Now, he also went on to post this longer explanation of what he's trying to get at the root at here. But again, let's read some of this. And it's basically the same thing that I was just talking about. But he says, if you were to ask what caused me to change my tune about President Trump from 2016 to 2020, I could give you a few reasons. But what we're seeing in Springfield really drives it home. Now, remember, JD Vance was somebody who used to say that Trump was America's Hitler. Okay, so that's not even just my rhetoric. That's JD Vance's rhetoric there. Trump is America's Hitler. Now, it seems to be from the change from JD that I've seen that it wasn't that he woke up to, oh, the liberal narrative against Trump is wrong. And, I was wrong about all of my opinions about him. It's more so that he saw that Trump was America's Hitler. And then he kind of later down the line was like, you know what? That might not be such a bad thing. Maybe that's not such a bad thing. Because I don't think that he had some sort of like an ideological awakening here, right? It seems like he just saw a path. It was a path of least resistance. He wanted to get elected as a senator of Ohio. And the way at the time that he needed to go about doing that was by sucking up to Trump. And so he's found himself in this position, right? But he says that Springfield is a perfect example of what changed his mind. He says housing costs skyrocketing, communicable diseases, car accidents, crime, insurance payments moving up, citizens complaining and mostly ignored. Again, it's fine to say that people, like the people living in Springfield, Ohio, have been left behind and forgotten by a corrupt and rotten system. That's true. But you know who's not causing or who's not at the core of that broken and corrupt system that has left them behind? Fucking Haitian migrants. Okay? You should be raging at the corporate elites that you pretend like you're standing against. That's who would be at the core of your critique if you were trying to get to, housing costs skyrocketing and grocery prices and, insurance rates moving up. That's who you should be going after, not the fucking Haitian migrants. They didn't cause this. Again, many of the businesses, many of the politicians in Springfield were asking people to come to Springfield because their population had been dwindling for years. And they were trying to bring business into the community. And they were trying to have workers who would be able to fill those jobs, right? And so Haitians decided to go there, to start migrating there, legally, by the way. Again, these are not illegal, these are legal migrants here that we're talking about. And so they start moving to this place. I mean, it's such transparent bullshit. Now, you guys can go and read the rest of this if you want to. I read through it. It's, again, touching on some of the same things that we were just talking about there. But we also had this. I mean, JD seems to be having kind of a meltdown as he's doubling down on this idea here and trying to make this strangely, bizarrely, a core part of his platform right now. And he's getting into fights online with people like Zayed Jelani and people like Crystal Ball, right? Obviously, transparency, I work with Crystal Ball, but I mean, the idea that you have a vice presidential candidate who's going on Twitter and getting into fights with writers or with journalists or with, online pundits or whatever the case may be, is this not just fucking pathetic, right? And the response that he gave didn't even make any sense. I mean, here's what JD said. He was responding to Zayed Jelani. And he said, I've always liked you, so maybe this would be a longer conversation, but come on. Are there no upsides to immigration is a radically different question from should we drop 20,000 people from a radically different culture into a small town in Ohio, et cetera, et cetera. Crystal said, when you insist on spreading neo-Nazi fueled smears, by the way, some of the people who were helping to get this narrative off the ground were literal, like out and about proud Nazis in Springfield who are part of an organization. I think it's like Blood something. You can go and Google that if you want to. But they've been giving speeches at some of these local community meetings and, been leading marches, etc. But actual neo-Nazis have been helping to fuel this kind of a narrative. And so she says, when you insist on spreading this neo-Nazi fueled smear about immigrants leading to bomb threats now, it kind of closes the space for this intellectual discussion about pluses and minuses of immigration that you're now retreating to, dude. And he responds with, crystal ball, I really hate neoliberalism. I'm a populist. Also, crystal ball, anyone who doesn't think 20,000 cheap laborers should be dropped on a small town in Ohio is a neo-Nazi. I mean, again, he's kind of proving the point that she was trying to make up here, which is that now you're retreating to, okay, now I think there's an issue with cheap laborers in this country. Keeping in mind, again, these are legal, documented migrants who organically moved to this place for job opportunities, right? And for the cheap cost of living. If you have an issue with quote unquote cheap laborers, wouldn't like step one be, okay, well, let's address the minimum wage, right? Let's make sure that people are not being treated, regardless of what their background is, as so-called cheap laborers for, corporations or businesses to exploit. That seems like it would be step number one, not trashing the migrants themselves for the crime of moving to a place to try to get a better opportunity for themselves and their families. But, I mean, the idea that this is what even is the point that he's trying to make here, right? Anyone who doesn't think 20,000 cheap laborers should be dropped on a small town in Ohio is a neo-Nazi. Nobody's saying that. Nobody is saying that you're a neo-Nazi because you have some issue about housing costs or you have some issue about immigration in general. No, people are calling you a neo-Nazi because you're spreading right-wing, neo-Nazi fueled racist messaging about Haitian migrants stealing and eating people's pets with no evidence whatsoever. That's why people are calling you racist. Not because you came out with a policy platform and you said, for XYZ reason, I would like to lower the amount of migrants that we're taking into this country, and here's how I'm going to address housing costs, etc. That's not how you started this conversation. So you don't then get to turn around and to say, oh, why is everybody calling me racist? You started this. You brought this on yourself. I mean, it's so pathetic. They're backing away from it now. At least own up to the kind of shit that you were talking about. Now, this meme here, is years and years and years old, but I think this really boils down the point that I'm trying to make about all of this. Posted, of course, by the legendary Internet Hippo. It's one of the oldest scams in politics, but it's always incredible to watch them do it in real time. And it was in response to JD Vance posting this. Kamala Harris wants to give illegal immigrants Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. So it's actually Kamala Harris who wants to bankrupt these programs. Vote Trump to save the program. It's literally just this, guys. You got a billionaire capitalist sitting here in the middle. You have an immigrant on the left, and you have some working class white guy on the right. And you have the billionaire capitalist saying to the white guy, careful, mate, that foreigner wants your cookie, while he is obviously hoarding the huge bulk of the cookies. And it's a simple meme. It's a simple message. But this is what JD Vance is doing. He is trying to pit this guy in Springfield, Ohio, against this Haitian migrant. When the reality is, again, at the core of all of these issues, whether it's housing or education or healthcare or whatever the case may be, the core of these issues is a structural issue with the economic and political system that we have in place right now. The idea that you are going to get anywhere by spreading made-up racist rumors about this guy over here, that's going to advance the prospects of this guy over here, that's not how this shit works. That's not how this shit works. And so again, it's the most obvious grift of all time. It's the most obvious scam of all time. We have continued posts here. I mean, this was just one from Trump, obviously being promoted here by Elon Musk as well. It's an AI-generated cat. I mean, try to read the down, text down here. But it says, Kamala hates me, and it's a cat holding up the sign. This is one of the more tame AI-generated images that I've seen. There was another video that I saw that was an AI-generated video of Trump holding a cat in his arms while he was running away from dark-skinned zombies who were supposedly, supposed to be the Haitian migrants in that video. And these videos and images are getting hundreds of millions of views, at least on Twitter, where right-wing content is being artificially boosted under Elon Musk's control and leadership. But they're really leaning into this, guys. They're really leaning into this. Again, does this image have any sort of text surrounding it about how Trump really just cares about wages, or he really cares about healthcare or jobs or education or housing costs? No, it's just a racist smear. So again, you don't then get to turn around and say, well, why is everybody calling us racist, right? It's because this has been the main focus of the narrative you guys have been pitching. You can't then turn around and say, oh, no, I'm really trying to have a conversation about material concerns working class people are facing. That's not what you're doing. That's not what you're doing. Now, we also have countless different examples that have been floating around of people on the right. Here we have Christopher Rufo in this example, trying to claim certain videos either from years ago or not from Springfield or not even from Ohio or not of Haitian immigrants. And they're trying to prove the point, right, to justify this narrative that they have been selling. And so they've been looking for evidence that Haitian migrants are stealing and eating people's pets. So he said this: we have discovered that migrants are in fact eating cats in Ohio. We have verified with multiple witnesses and visual cross-references that African migrants in Dayton, the next city over from Springfield, barbecued these cats last summer. So as many people pointed out, this does not look to be a cat. This looks to be a couple of chickens on a grill here outside. Guys, first off, as he even admits here, number one, this isn't in Dayton, or this isn't in Springfield. This is in Dayton, right? So you're not even talking about the Haitian migrants in Springfield. You're talking about a completely different place, right? Happens to be close by. You also say that it's African migrants. So it's not even Haitian migrants. So we're not talking about Haitian migrants. We're not even talking about a cat on the grill. We're talking about chickens on the grill. And you're talking about a different city, right? I mean, what are we doing here, guys? What are we doing? It's also a video, by the way, from over a year ago. Now, another example here, we had this being spread around here by Anthony Scott. Don't know who this guy is, but again, you look at the views and it has 7 million views on this. Uncovered, man catches his Bosnian, now we're doing Bosnians, neighbors cooking a dog. At the end, he says his cat is missing. Guys, this is not a dog. This is a lamb, as was pointed out by many people down below. It's not even a dog. It's a lamb, which I think is a pretty, at least culturally normal thing for Americans to eat. Now, we also have this example, posted here by Yashar Ali. The Ohio Division of Wildlife tells TMZ that the black man holding a geese in the photo that went viral was actually picking up the geese after they were hit in a car accident. As previously reported, the incident didn't occur in Springfield. It took place in Columbus, and there's no evidence that the man is Haitian or an immigrant. So this was another one of the ones that was floating around, is like, oh, the Haitian migrants in Springfield are picking up geese from the park and they're killing them and eating them. First of all, kind of a weird thing, because are conservatives now against hunting geese? Is that what we're saying right now? I don't think that that's the case. But it also, again, it gets to the core of how this is just obvious racism, guys. This is not a Haitian migrant. It's not even in Springfield. And he wasn't even taking it from a park to eat. He was removing it from the road because it was roadkill. Come on. We have to have the Ohio Division of Wildlife coming out to clarify stories like this. It's just bleak, man. It's so bleak. Now, again, we also have some statements here in terms of what's been happening because of this narrative. The Republican mayor of Springfield says this: any political leader that takes the national stage and has the national spotlight needs to understand the gravity of the words that they have for cities like ours and what they say impacts our city. We've had bomb threats in the last 2 days. We've had personal threats the last 2 days, and it's increasing because the national stage is swirling this up. Springfield, Ohio is caught in a political vortex, and it is a bit out of control. We are a wonderful city, a beautiful town, and for what it's worth, your pets are safe in Springfield, Ohio. So there's the Republican mayor of Springfield pushing back on some of these rumors. Now, we also had, so if you guys remember in my last video where I talked about this, apparently the first person who started this rumor was on Facebook, right? And I guess when she posted this, she didn't think it was going to turn into this massive national story and that Trump would bring it up and JD Vance would bring it up. But it started as a random Facebook post of like I heard from a friend who heard from a friend who heard from a friend that their cat was found hanging up at a Haitian migrant's house, right? Completely unverified, no evidence provided whatsoever. And now even she, the original poster of this rumor, is saying that she regrets it. She says, I deleted the post. I was wrong. I messed up royally. I never meant to cause such hate. So the person who started this entire rumor on Facebook, sort of incidentally, right, is now coming out and saying she regrets posting it. We still, right now, have JD Vance and Trump talking about this as if this is completely real, as if this is verified, right? they're still continuing to double down on it. We also had, so I guess one of these stories that took place in Springfield is that a kid was killed as a part of a car accident, I guess, that involved a Haitian migrant in Springfield. And the father of this Ohio boy specifically asked Trump not to invoke his son's death in this conversation. I believe as a part of this speech, he got up there and he said that he wished, and this is crazy to hear from somebody who just lost their child, right? Regardless of what the situation is, but he said that he wished that it wasn't a Haitian migrant who happened to be involved in this crash that killed his son. He wished that it was like a 50-year-old white man, because then it wouldn't have brought on this massive amount of hate from many right-wingers around the country, and him and his wife being used as political pawns for JD and for Trump to try to sell their racist messaging. He disagrees with it that firmly. He's specifically asking them to stop using the death of his son in order to push their agenda. Now, we also have, again, Haitians in Springfield, Ohio are keeping their children home and reporting damage to their property, basically pogroms, as anti-immigrant conspiracy theories spread, fanned by statements from Trump and Vance. So we basically have like pogroms that are being set up right now. We also had the Proud Boys who are marching in Springfield, by the way, just the other day. We have pogroms that are starting against Haitian migrants because of this narrative coming from Trump and Vance. I mean, keeping in mind, JD Vance is a senator from Ohio. He's sparking false rumors and pogroms against people in his own home state, to the point where there are bomb threats now, where kids are having to be kept out of school. Here was one example. Springfield City School District tells ABC News that they're evacuating 2 elementary schools. They're releasing the kids back to their parents. These are your own fucking constituents who you're screwing over, who you're putting in a state of fear because of all of this. We also had Trump, who was asked about this. Do you denounce the bomb threats? And he said, I don't know what happened with the bomb threats. You can't even denounce bomb threats? Really? This is where we're at? I don't know what happened with the bomb threats. I know that it's been taken over by illegal migrants, and that's a terrible thing that happened. So, again, guys, I'll leave this down below if you want to go read into more of what I was talking about in terms of why many of these migrants ended up in Springfield. But we are entering some real dark territory here, guys. I mean, this is some fucked up shit here. I've seen a lot of smaller other examples of this kind of fear-mongering from conservatives. Obviously, this is nothing new generally, but we've gotten to the point now where they don't even bother pretending to have evidence or pretending to base what they're saying in reality. They just don't even bother. I mean, the first clip we watched was JD saying, yeah, I'm creating stories to try to bring attention to a completely unrelated thing having to do with, housing costs and insurance rates. I mean, this is some real dark shit here, guys. Haitian migrants stealing people's pets and eating them. Can we get more overtly racist than this? I mean, it's just lazy. It's just lazy. Now, apparently there's been some polling data that's come out recently showing that, it's around 25%, a quarter of the country believes this story, which is an alarming thing on the one hand, and also it shows, maybe this is not the best narrative to stake your entire campaign on right now, but man, tell me what you guys think about this, because this is getting close to making me lose hope at this point. It's just so egregious.
Politic guy has the best politic. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me, everyone is saying